I actually have like massive motivation to figure this stuff out because like that's terrifying and I don't know how to stop that from happening again.
Hi, I'm Ferg. Welcome to the Scout in the Woods podcast. Episode 2 is called Charlie and the Chair. Our main guest, Charlie himself, suggested special defenestration for the name. And kudos to co-guest Liam too for word dropping aperture in Sefton Park, which also struck me as a very apt title. Well, guys, I'm sorry, but I personally got completely sidetracked by the furniture in this story. In what follows, our main guest Charlie recounts 3 standout and frankly pretty terrifying experiences from his 20s. I connected with Charlie via his mum, an amazing board member at the sports club I recently joined. And by the way, I'm also going to shamelessly drop into the YouTube footage here 2 beautiful dogs that Sue was taking care of on the eve of Halloween, after they fondly reminded me of our own family dog Scout, aka Scout in the Woods.
Wow. You like, wow.
Later that evening, Sue told her son's story around the fire pit while the dogs stood guard and protected us from mischief night. And I connected with Charlie on Halloween itself to hear in his own words what happened to him and how it's affected him. Just before we get going, quick bit of pub quiz trivia for you. Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was inspired by a battle between manufacturers Cadbury's and Rowntree's to discover the perfect ingredients for chocolate happiness. So just to frame this story a little bit, and some might find this a bit of a stretch, but Charlie and the Chair, for me, represents instead a modern-day tussle between secularism and spirituality to best explain what gives us our experience and what might govern our fate and fortune. Thanks in advance also to Charlie's friends, to Liam and to Tash, who briefly shares some experiences of her own in the midsection. After these first episodes, by the way, we're going to find a way to edit these stories to more like 40, 50 minutes, which was just about enough to cover the main incidents here. But honestly, these early episodes have just kind of become beasts of their own making. So Charlie, thank you so much. For me, this was an incredible story, an incredible conversation. I'm excited to watch your music career take off. Of course, you're more than welcome to weigh in on the theme tune for this show, which I think we'll all agree could do with a little attention. I don't know who the current lead singer is, but he absolutely sucks. So actually, to any musicians, and of course, to any listeners with a story of your own or a friend or family member's experience to share, please reach out to ferg@scoutinthewoods.com. Otherwise, enjoy the show and enjoy episode 2, which is called Charlie and the Chair.
I remember having this odd dream of it basically felt like there was this like glowing golden figure like hovering in front of me. And I remember feeling the urge to go towards it, and then very, very abruptly and suddenly I wake up at the moment that my foot slips off the windowsill. So I'm asleep, suddenly I wake up and I'm falling out of the upstairs window, and I fell 2 stories.
All right, here we go. Yeah, Christmas number 1, right?
Christmas number 1,
Yeah.
Halloween number 1.
Halloween.
Whatever was guiding me was like, right, well, he's going off the edge now, that's fine, he can wake up.
Chorus is going to be thanks for the music and the song we're singing out Scotty in the woods, thanks and rapid sound.
What do you think?
For overstaying wise, for showing Sharon on the river of Styx with his pockets full of color for the pilgrims of love. For the music and the song we're singing out Scotty in the woods,
Cool, nice to meet you, man. How you doing?
Yeah. Nice to meet you as well. Heard a lot about you from your mum.
Oh, your mum's a legend, honestly. She's just like good to the core, like and the club, she really kind of wants it to be a nice community and stuff like that. So she did actually. Did she tell you that she was gonna share your experience last night as a
Yeah, she actually rang me to get like more of the details so she could get it more accurate. But yeah, so
she did a good job. I think you can trump it, but
okay. Well, yeah. So I was raised by a staunch atheist family. Like my dad always had like Dawkins books, and he was always very much just like, right, once you're dead, you're dead. That's it. Black Void, bring it on. So that was how I was raised. But then still, I think even as a kid, I was quite agnostic and still like had some sense that there was something more. I think I had like I actually used to talk to like I used to think I was being watched over by like guardian angels and stuff, and I'd like talk to them when I was little. Then kind of fell off when I got a bit older. But I was always like agnostic, but still very much like raised by like a scientific family and taught like there needs to be like evidence and proof for things to believe in them. So yeah, that was how I lived my life generally. Until like this one big incident, which did require me to reevaluate my worldview and my interpretation of reality and the nature of consciousness and yeah, everything that followed on from there. So I think I was 20 or 21, and I'd gone down to visit my friend in Bristol for his birthday. We were going to Chepstow races, and I was staying at my other friend's. Annoyingly, I can't actually remember where exactly in Bristol this was. All I can remember is that it was a really old, dilapidated terrace house. And as I was walking in the house, my friend turned to me and was like, "Right, so this house is haunted." And I was like, "All right, yeah, like whatever." Like, and he was like, "No, like," and he's not the kind of person who like says stuff like this. He's very also scientific minded, like normal person, mechanical engineering degree. Like he was like, "Nah, seriously." When we moved in, like we got told it was haunted. We didn't believe it, but then like we'd been living there for a few weeks, and people started to wake up with like weird bruises on their arms and legs, and like no, we couldn't really understand what was happening. And then it's like quite a few nights, picture frames would just start falling off the walls, and they mentioned there was like a weird smell that would move around the house. Um, and yeah, just a general sense of like unease and hostility occasionally. And he told me all this, and I was like, all right, yeah, like that is weird, but I mean, again, like I'm a scientist. I'm not buying it basically. But then when I walked into the house, I was like, okay, no, there's something about this house is a bit odd.
Can I back up just a sec to understand why your pals had moved into this place and stayed there,
I have
and
no
what the hell this
idea.
place was?
He told me all this like quite blasé, and I was like, "What? Okay, but like that sounds terrifying. Why are you still here?" And there was like, I think basically just because it was like they're all students or had just finished being students. They're all skint. It was cheap, and it was quite in near the center of Bristol. So yeah, I think that was the main thing. They had like five of them living there.
How long had they been staying there?
Don't think they've been there that long. I think maybe like 6 months. Like it hadn't been like a long term thing. It's like a rental thing.
It seems like quite a long time for me to stay somewhere where paintings are flying off the wall and you're waking
Yeah,
up with bruises with no explanation.
yeah,
Um,
I thought that. But yeah, that was just what I got greeted with when I turned up. He hadn't mentioned it until I walked in the house, and I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm here now. I've got nowhere else to stay. So yeah. And I was walking around the house and looked outside, and it shared its garden with a really old church. So there was like the house ended, there was like a little yard, like a small railing, and then graveyard, and then an old church. And there was some of the graves were apparently in the same garden as this house.
right.
And there was a really old basement there down the stairs. And I think Matty just told me like, yeah, the landlord said we're not allowed down there. There's like that's been locked. We don't know what's down there. But it was all just adding up to be like a bit ominous. But yeah, again, I was like 20, 21. I was like, yeah, it's fine. I don't believe in any of this stuff. It'd be fine. Like, so yeah, then we went out for a few drinks for my mate's birthday. Um, had a pleasant night in Bristol, and then we come back, and my room is the room at the top of the stairs on the right, the one overlooking the graveyard. Uh, so yeah, I go in, I go to sleep. It's a pretty like standard looking room. It's quite old, like big old heavy sash window. Um, but yeah, I go in and put myself to bed about midnight, and then I remember having this odd dream of it basically felt like there was this like glowing golden figure like hovering in front of me, and kind of like beckoning me towards it. And I remember feeling the urge to go towards it, and then very, very abruptly and suddenly I wake up at the moment that my foot slips off the windowsill. Um, so I'm asleep. Suddenly I wake up and I'm falling out of the upstairs window, and I fell 2 stories. Um, I hit a chair, thankfully, which broke my fall, but my head hit the floor quite hard. It was concrete. So split the back of my head open. And I was just lying there in the pouring rain, just like, what has just happened? Like I was asleep and suddenly I'm bleeding on the floor, like outside the house. And yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. I was really lucky that chair was there because otherwise it was just like 2 stories onto concrete, like while I was like basically unconscious. And yeah, I pulled myself together, got up and banged on the window till one of my mates woke up. I think it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. My mate come down and unlock the door and just sees me covered in blood and soaking wet. Just like, what has just happened to you? And I'm like, I have no idea, but he just yeah, let me in. And initially he thought I must have just been like fucking about or like having a cigarette out the window or something had fallen out. And I was like, no, like I don't know what's just happened here. I was asleep. Like so then we go back upstairs and we go into the room and it's like an old heavy sash window, like I kind of like take quite a lot of effort to open. And I think apparently it was locked when it's normally kept locked, and it was locked when I went to sleep. And it's wrenched fully wide open, like as high as it can go. I used to sleepwalk when I was a kid, but I hadn't done it in years. And I just couldn't think of any rational or logical explanation to explain that. Like, like why would unlock a window in a house I'd never been in and didn't know how to, I didn't, wasn't familiar with that window, didn't know how to open it or move it. Why would I, in my sleep, open it, unlock it, and then throw myself out the window? Um, yeah, like I tried to rationalize it as much as I could with in like a scientific way, but like with all this, the added stuff I've been told about the house being haunted, like I couldn't really just like hand wave it away. My mate told me it was locked. I'm like, I'm not sure how it was locked, but like, yeah, he told me before I went to sleep, like, yeah, they keep that window closed. It's usually locked. And then, yeah, somehow in my sleep, I'd figured out how to unlock it and fully wrenched it wide open, and then climbed out of the window and was stood on the windowsill. And then that moment where my foot slips off the windowsill is the moment that I wake up, like as I'm falling, like with the ground coming towards me, and I have like a very instant moment of just like, oh my God, I'm not asleep. Like I thought it was a dream for a second. I was like, no, I'm actually awake. And then yeah, and then I hit the chair and then my head hits the floor. And then I'm just kind of lying there dazed in the rain, in a lot of pain and very, very, very confused. Um, and then just looking up at the window and seeing it was open and just feeling like this dread start to set in, being like, this is something very strange has just happened. I remember just lying there, just like I just woken up like a split second ago and then had a head injury. So I was like quite dazed and a bit confused. So I wouldn't say I was fully compos mentis, but I was like aware enough to be like frightened and yeah, just generally perplexed about what had just happened. And yeah, I was taken in my surroundings. Like I was like I was just in my boxes, just like lying in the rain with blood coming down my head. Like it was it was with a graveyard next to me. I was like, this is weird. This is uncharted territory for me.
Mr. Bean and some wine fronts right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then eventually just like drag myself upright and bang on the window until my mate wakes up. But yeah, it was horrible. Yeah, it was actually traumatic. No,
sleeping
no, no.
downstairs.
Yeah, I sat downstairs. Yeah.
Okay, when you went back in, the sash window was just completely ajar then.
Yeah, so it was like completely down, locked when I went to sleep. When I come back up, it was like wrenched fully wide open, like as wide as it could go.
Did you lock up the window, or can you remember what you did to?
I think we put it down because it was raining and cold. And we put it down again, and then yeah, I just got out of that room. Um,
It wasn't like
yeah.
that you brought out a big mortise lock and you and you know locked it again.
No, I can't remember. I can't actually remember how it was locked. I think it might have just been like a little clasp or something. But
Mm.
I just remember it wasn't like an easy modern window to open or anything. It was like a big old heavy thing that required like a fair bit of effort to like wrench
Yeah,
it open and push it up and keep it there.
yeah, they can make you look pathetic sometimes. Them kind of.
Yeah.
Like, so the chair. So where was it? Like in relation to, was it garden furniture? Was it within an assemblage of?
No, no, it was So I fell out I suppose you call it the first floor. You go up the stairs, it's on that level. But to the window overlooking the garden, it had like a little patio, but the patio was like sunken, so it was like actually like 2 stories that I fell. So it was like below. It's like the door to the basement was down there,
Mhm.
and there just happened to be one like old wooden chair, like just a standard upright like wooden chair. I don't know where it came from because there's no other furniture that matched it in the garden, but it was just left perfectly under this window. Um, and I think my back went straight into the top of the chair when I fell. So that broke my fall a little bit, but then it tipped back and then my head smashed into the concrete, and that's where like most of the actual damage was. But I had bruises on like my back and my arm and stuff from when I hit the chair. Um, but yeah, it is just lucky it was there because it could have been a lot more serious if that hadn't broken my fall. If I'd just been straight like semi-conscious onto concrete, I think that could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got bruises on your back where it's broken your fall, then you've
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
impacted it in quite a big way there.
yeah, massively.
Did you ever find out who'd put it there, why it was there? Did yeah,
No, I do regret this now, but I did fully just kind of put the whole thing to one side for a bit because I was just like, it's my mate's birthday, just kind of, and also I just didn't really have the mental capacity to be exploring what had just happened to me. I thought, right, this is easier to just try and forget about it, try and have a nice time. But we literally went to the races like 5 hours after this happened. And I'm there in a suit with like blood matted in my hair because like, I had this open wound that was still. I should have got stitches for it really, but again, I just didn't want to have to like be like I need to go to hospital because I've just been thrown out of a window by a ghost to my mate on his 21st birthday. It's like I just like I kind of just sucked it up and got on with it.
did
Uh,
you win at the races?
nah,
How was your luck?
lost loads of money. It's crap.
Did you?
I
What,
hate,
what
hate it.
what kind of horses were you betting on? Like,
I'll
God's
just
law
name it.
or like
Yeah, just whichever one had the funniest name. But yeah, I hate the races anyway. I think I was just going because of my mate's birthday. But yeah, I feel bad for the horses. But
right.
yeah, it was a weird weekend overall.
Okay, Ferg just butting in here to mention at this point, I asked Charlie whether he'd actually seen any of the bruises his friends had mentioned on waking up in this strange old house.
To be honest, I hadn't seen any evidence or hard evidence of anything before I went to sleep, and then afterwards, I was just trying to put it out of my mind because I knew I had to
Yeah.
stay there again. I was like, I actually don't want to dig too deep into this.
Okay. Okay.
Right now, like I was kind of just, it was my mate's birthday. I didn't want to like. I actually should have gone to hospital. We had a party there somewhere else later that night, and one of his mates, who's a doctor, looked at my head and was like, "You needed stitches for that. Like that's actually quite bad." But I didn't want to derail my mate's birthday because loads of them just thought I was an idiot who'd fallen out the window and was making up a story to explain it. But like a few of them were like the guy who lived in the house was like he was white. He went white. He was like, "This is actually horrible." But yeah, I didn't want to make a big fuss. I didn't want to derail my mate's birthday, so I kind of just like put it to one side. And yeah, I'm quite like that in a lot of my life. I kind of just like compartmentalize things and deal with them when I have the time for it.
Is that a
And
family trait?
could be, yeah. My mum's quite like a bit like that as well. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how I've been raised. Just don't make a fuss, basically. So yeah, kind of just put that to one side, and then I suppose over the year after that, I had to like yeah delve into it a little bit more. And as I spoke to other people and saw their reactions, I kind of realized how unusual this was compared to a lot of like you hear ghost stories off people, and it's like interesting, but I think this one was like I've not heard many where people are getting physically injured. Um, and like this seemed like this thing wanted to cause me harm and was trying to like I don't know injure or kill me and almost succeeded. And that's something I can't really ignore, and I've had to like confront the realities of that. And yeah, it is scary. It has kept me awake at night, like wondering like why me, why there, why like that room, why yeah, why in that way, and how. Like I need to like I'm someone who needs to understand everything. Like I like to understand, like I explore everything deeply. I want to understand the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, and like this obviously threw a massive curveball into things, and I had to like reevaluate a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
Um,
really, in a way, I'm actually almost kind of grateful for it now because it did spur me on to, you know, it gave me that impetus and drive to to go and explore these kind of themes, and I've learned a lot, and it's been really beneficial to my general like life and understanding of reality. And yeah, I kind of see it as
That's
a positive now. Maybe I don't know.
so interesting. That.
So, as you can hear, Charlie's experience is prompting questions that are really right at the heart of the Scout in the Woods project as a whole. Namely, does the brain produce consciousness? Or would it be better framed as something the mind experiences? Is it something else entirely? Or if we go a little bit further still, was there a spiritual element in what happened to him? For Charlie himself, I wanted to know what persuaded him as a rationalist that what happened to him that night was external agency as opposed to something internally produced. Because for one thing, it didn't sound on the whole like his friends and family were going to be immediately receptive to the idea that this was something paranormal. I was keen to understand more about the specifics and the nature of the dream that led Charlie to waking up falling from the window.
It was like a pure white figure with like a golden like aura around it, kind of just like hovering in blackness, and that's all I can really remember. And there was a sense of it like inviting me towards it. It was like it was not a long like not a long dream really. Like that was basically all I had. And I felt that sense of it inviting me forwards, and then suddenly I'm awake and it's gone, and there's just like a black sky and then concrete coming towards me, and that's basically all I remember from. Like I remember going to sleep, seeing that golden figure, and then coming out of the dream state, and then pain basically.
It wasn't a bad thing though. That's a question. Like the golden figure.
It
Um,
it didn't inherently seem bad in my dream at all. Like it didn't seem like it didn't seem good either. Like it was just like it was more there wasn't much emotion attached to it. There was more um just an image and a sense of like wanting me to come towards it. That was all I had.
hmm. So do you put it down to that figure that that was the agency, at least within your dream? I mean, like in we've got like a Charlie cam, then it's just you being an absolute fool and like opening a window
Yeah.
and like tipping yourself out and waking up just as you're going over the edge, right? But presumably that's what I don't know if that's what you're
That's what I
imagining
assume
happened
happened. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
reality. But in your dream state, let's say, call it dream state, you're um do you feel like that figure was the thing that gave you that was the agency that pushed you out?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that's the only way I can really interpret it because I firmly do not believe it was my own agency that threw me out that window. It doesn't make any sense that that's the
Mm.
was like I was pretty happy at the time. I had no like wasn't depressed, had no suicidal thoughts whatsoever. Like I've been pleasantly surprised by the way people react to the story generally because I think because like I'm not known as someone who would like make these kind of things up. I was known as someone like quite like grounded and rational. And then to come out with this story and like be able to show people like the head wounds and like the window and stuff, and like obviously there was a lot of people just being like, "Oh, you were just drunk," or "You were just like open the window for a smoke or whatever." I was like, "I don't smoke. I was sober." Like, um, yeah. So, but the vast majority of people have been like intrigued and horrified, and then a lot of people have had like not I've never heard a story on the same level of like physical injury, but I've heard a lot of people tell me stories about like them going to sleep in like old buildings and then like having dreams of them speaking to ghosts who are like leading them around, and then they've woken up and they've been like sleepwalking towards different rooms and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I've got my friend Tash was telling me like only like a few weeks ago was telling me yeah this happened to her in a really old house.
Right. So that latest comment from Charlie feeds into the next section, because last week, by some weird happy coincidence, Charlie's friends Tash and Liam were staying with him for a couple of nights and joined us for a walk in Sefton Park. There, Tash recounted those experiences Charlie had mentioned during our Zoom call a fortnight ago. This is... Hey Tash.
Hiya.
Actually, first up, I wonder what you make of like what happened to Charlie. When did you hear about that? And had your stuff happened before or afterwards? Or
I don't know in chronology of time, but it reminded me of a dream I had, but not this dream, not this experience that I'm about to tell you. But yeah, that sounded like. Ugh.
Did you find
Gross. It's quite scary.
did you find it easy to relate to because of your prior experiences, or
Yeah. Me
okay.
moved about.
Okay, and Charlie, you can corroborate that. Like, it was a good chat with.
Yeah, it was nice to hear that something
With Tash.
similar had happened to someone else. Like,
Thank God for that. Yeah. Okay, so I was staying in a really posh hotel that used to be a manor in a small village. So like proper like estate, but like old estate, and it's Stratford-upon-Avon, right? So I was staying there with my partner, and had fallen asleep naked in this bed. And for 20 minutes he was going to bed, but I was asleep. And I thought in my dream I'd been like talking to this person, but in his experience I was just talking in tongues, like out loud, like muttering to myself. And the minute he got to bed, apparently I get out of bed, and I was still in a dream where I thought I was talking to this girl, and she was like going to take me on a tour around the building. So I've never slept before in my life, and I get out of bed. I didn't know he locked the door. I unlocked the door. He thought I'd gone to the bathroom, but I unlocked the door to the hotel room, this old manor room, and go out into the hallway, fully naked, walking along having a chat to this girl. And she was like, oh, got to the Charlotte room, which is the room we were meant to book. And she was like, oh, this is my room.
Okay, so Ferg dialing in. I'm cutting Tash's story here because this Scout in the Woods episode focuses on Charlie. But Tash's story isn't over by any means. I'll catch up with her soon, and her incident involved a none other than William Shakespeare connection, which, and anyone will tell you that one thing I'm not is a sparky marketeer. However, I am very confident that you will want to hear the rest of what happened to Tash. Anyway, her contribution in this episode, for me, enhanced what happened to Charlie in two key ways. One, Tash's experience shows how sleepwalking can seem influenced by an external presence or character rather than the dreamer's own internal motivations or subconscious, so to speak. And you're going to have to take my word on it for now that becomes even clearer in her full account. It might interest you to know also that Tash had never, to her knowledge, sleepwalked before that night in the hotel. And two, you may have noticed something else Tash said, which was that on hearing Charlie's story about the window and the chair, she immediately recalled a separate, memorable dream she'd had as a teenager. Well, a short while later in the park, we arrived at the Magic Tree, a famous place where people go to climb, sit, contemplate, and generally invite good vibes. Perched on its branches, Tash shared a bit more about that dream from her adolescence. I'll play a brief clip now, and then summarise this myself, given the poor sound quality.
Going to be... Oh, just say that thing again that you said about you'd had a dream. Like, so Charlie told you this thing, right?
Yeah.
About his experience, and what did it...
My dream was like I was in this, I kept having like at the time loads of house-based dreams, which are like massive houses with loads of people in it. I walked into this room and this person was like by a window, and I was like, something in me made me, like something external from me but inside my head made me kind of do a narrative-based thing where I coaxed them to throw themselves out of this window.
Okay, so effectively, Tash can strongly recollect an unnerving lucid dream she had from her teenage years when she acted as a kind of conduit for another unknown character to jump from a fourth-story window. She described being taken over by some other not-so-cool presence to affect this narrative, rather than willing it herself. And on waking up perturbed, she attempted to re-enter the dream to reenact the scene with a happier, less homicidal vibey ending. Well, I should say that the guys were pretty sceptical in the park at the notion that Tash's dream could somehow have been linked to what happened to Charlie several years later, even though they did speculate about some recent scientific hypotheses which are beginning to question the linearity of time. And even though all three friends are, from what I could gather now, pretty open spiritually and pretty open to some unconventional explanations for these phenomena, not least given their own experiences and those of others they know. And I should point out that most of their personal incidents happened either before they came of age or otherwise outside the immediate influence of drugs or alcohol. Well, Charlie has only known Tash for about a year now, and he definitely had the sense that Tash's lucid dream about a window fall was surely a coincidence when considering what happened to him. However, it did just seem odd that these experiences and strands were all weirdly falling into my lap to produce this episode for the podcast. So that was reason enough, I thought, to include that bit. And what was perhaps most uncanny from my point of view was that Tash, separately, had also weighed in unprompted that day with a theory about narrative structure and the construct of death, which bore a lot of similarity to my own theory connecting story structure and consciousness. Not identical by any means, some talk about rectangles and stuff like this, but it was something that I set out very determinedly to explore as part of this project. So again, another odd coincidence. Anyway, as I say, this conversation in the park took place only last week, with Charlie much further down the road to interpreting his own anomalous experiences. But between the night of his window fall and now, 8 years or so down the line, 2 further perturbing events were to happen to Charlie, and we'll hear about these next. One of the incidents kept Charlie awake all night, and the other threatened to keep him asleep forever. At the same time, a range of other more positive experiences were gradually leading Charlie to entertain spiritual explanations for what was happening to him. So we're going to pick it back up with Charlie attempting to come to terms with the original window fall incident, and not least how he would broach that experience with his more secular-minded parents.
Yeah, I think this thing has actually quite upset her quite a lot. And also, I felt weird about telling my parents because obviously my dad is very, very rational. And even my mum hasn't really got any time for spirituality generally. When I was, it was always like, yeah, like we're science people. We don't believe in these things. So I felt strange about telling them because I wasn't sure if they'd believe me or they'd think I was just, yeah, I don't know, attention seeking or whatever you want to call it. But thankfully she did believe me. That was really nice. And I think it's like, I think it's the level of like detail that I can give to the story, and like, yeah, I think it comes across to a lot of people that like I'm not making this up. Like this did happen to me and it has affected me in quite a deep way. And
So even then, just thinking through now, you could still, and I don't know what made you switch to saying this is paranormal, i.e., this is external agency, not my subconscious. Like,
yeah,
why have you not framed it as your subconscious making you sleepwalk, do some funky shit and making you sleepwalk? Like most people would think of like night terrors or kids when they're
yeah.
sleepwalking stuff. Why haven't you framed it as that's the weird and wonderful me getting me to do stuff? It's my imagination.
Because yeah, I've thought about this a fair bit, and I think if it had happened in my own house on just like a normal day and somewhere that I spent a lot of time, I maybe could have done that. And like if I'd been sleepwalking a lot and one time I'd thrown myself out the window, I would have been like, okay, well that's weird, but like at least there's some kind of like context for it. It's the fact that it was my first time staying somewhere that I'd already been told was haunted, and like already been a history of strange things happening in this house, and I'd been told that, and I was aware of that, and other people were aware of that. The first time I'd stayed there, something of this magnitude happens for the first time in my life. I couldn't, yeah, it just seemed like that's not a coincidence. Like that's not something that can be like hand waved away by.
Because I guess you could say, well, you've been primed and
Yeah,
therefore,
you could say that, yeah.
right? But it's a big stretch to go from like, because you went to sleep thinking, all right, a little bit spooky, but these guys are nuts. Like that, right? Not, oh, I'm properly spooked. I hope I don't do anything to myself tonight.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not sure
wasn't
about going to
scared at
sleep.
all. I wasn't pranging out. I wasn't like anxious or anything. I just went to sleep, and
Yeah.
then that happened. So yeah, like that's just it's just like I said, I've thought about this a lot of ways because it would be a lot easier for me to have been able to explain this rationally. That would have been like it would have saved me a lot of mental effort, and like if I could just continue in my existing worldview of like strange things happen sometimes, but science can explain everything, that would have been a lot easier for me, and like yeah, been a lot more straightforward. But I've tried to do it like that, and I can't internally justify it like that. I can't get my head around it in that way, so I've had to open myself up to the other explanations for it.
And I don't know what kind of timescale, or even if you had a penny drop moment that you can think of, like 2-3 weeks, 4 months down the line. I don't know what it was, but maybe like if you can try to shed some light on that. But what was it that made you shift towards saying, no, this is external agency? Like,
I think it was that dream of the golden figure, and just the fact that like I'd never been in that room before. I'd never touched that window. I didn't know how to unlock it. I didn't know how to open it. It was a difficult thing to open, and it's like yeah, fair enough, sleepwalking where you just like, walk around your room or like walk to a different room or whatever. Like, but like complicated physical tasks when you're asleep, it's like I just can't explain that. As in, like, if I was asleep, how was I able to know how to unlock that window and open it? Like, unless I was being guided by something who had a desire for me to be out of that window. Like, I don't think I had that desire. I've never done that before. Like, I've never jumped out a window before. Never like I think I sleepwalked a bit when I was a kid, but it always just I like sleepwalk and go to the toilet and then go back to bed, like that kind of thing. But um, well, yes, I suppose that was the big catalyst for me starting to be more aware of spirituality and yeah, this kind of side of things. But again, it was kind of something that wasn't really at the forefront of my mind. Like I had other stuff going on. Um, but yeah, the other big one was I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was 2020, I think. Yeah, my parents told me they'd booked this really nice cottage that they were going to stay in. I can't remember where it was with the Lake District. Might be the Lake District. Yeah, we're gonna stay there and go on like a walking holiday. And me and my sister invited. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, that sounds great. And then like on the way there, they were like, oh yeah, so this is like a really old cottage. And I was like, how old is it? And like, oh, 1500s. And I was like, okay. And then yeah, we get there, look at it. It is like a proper like old like thatched roof kind of deal. I was like, okay, well, and then I walked in. And the second I walked in, I was like, okay, there's something here. There's some kind of energy here, and I don't think I want to sleep here. It felt old. Like obviously the house was old. It felt like there was a lot of accumulated energy in this house, and there was some like all the artifacts from like there was antiques everywhere. Like my mum even said there was like a table that looked like it'd been used for seances. Like there was a lot of I don't know, otherworldly energy, whatever you want to call it, attached to this place. And this was the first time I was like, I am perceptive to this in a way that I didn't think I was, but I could feel it as this like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, extra sensory thing. And then yeah, I just because I had in the back of my head the last time I stayed in a place like this, I got very seriously injured. And I can't as soon as my parents said, do you want to sleep on the ground floor? And I was like, yep, absolutely. I will sleep downstairs and I'll stay on the couch and just absolutely did not feel comfortable actually going to sleep. Obviously, the last time I went to sleep in a place like this, something horrible happened. Um, and yeah, there was like an armchair in the corner of the room, and I remember sat on the sofa looking at this armchair, and I could just sense there was something sat in it staring back at me. Like I felt like I was being watched the whole time I was in that house.
When
Uh,
did you first sense that figure in the chair? Like during the daytime, like in the
Not
evening?
during the
Like,
daytime, though. This was just at night.
Mhm.
When I was like ostensibly trying to go to sleep, but I think I kind of knew I wasn't going to go to sleep. I was kind of stayed awake all night. Yeah, just having that that sense of being perceived. It wasn't necessarily hostile, but there was no like actual sense of malice about any of it. But I could just tell there was energy in that place, and it was kind of strange for me to be able to be like, okay, I can perceive this, and it doesn't seem like any of my family can, and it doesn't seem to
Mhm.
be bothering them. But why is it just me who's like on edge here? Obviously, I've had this experience in the past, but like, um, yeah, and like obviously it was nowhere near as severe as the first one, and like it didn't try and influence me in any way, but I could just tell I was being looked at and surveyed, and I was looking back. I mean, I remember at one point in that just being like, what do you want? And then got no response. I was like, actually, maybe I probably shouldn't antagonize it because like you hear these things about like people inviting things in, and then it gets worse or whatever. But
Out
yeah,
loud?
out loud, yeah. I was trying to talk to this thing. It's been like, what do you want? Like, I'm sorry, I'm in your space. Like, I'll be gone soon. And the way I saw it is like, this is an Airbnb. It's not my space. It's their space. Like, I can't come in
Right.
and tell them to get out. You know what I mean?
Oh,
They've been there a lot longer than me.
yeah. I suppose it's not your home. Yeah, it's not coming
Yeah,
into your home. Yeah.
just going into someone else's house and saging them. Like, they get so it wasn't nothing about it was too intense, but it was like the first time I'd ever had like a concrete sense that I was aware of a presence or an energy, whatever you want to call it. And it was instant. It was the second I walked across the threshold. I remember even looking at the house, I was like, Like I already had a feeling, and then as soon as I walked in, I was like, "There's stuff here. Like this is okay. Right, we'll have to deal with this." And it never felt hostile. It never felt like ominous. It's just I think I was just interpreting it that way because it was new to me, and I'd had this past bad experience. And yeah, I'd like to be able to have these kind of more positive experiences with it, and maybe I can in the future. But I think that one was just like I wasn't expecting it. I was already kind of dreading it, and then yeah, when I was aware of it, it was like, oh, this is a bit long. But it was fine in the end. There were no incidents, and yeah, it was just like
Yeah.
the first time I'd like being okay. I can feel this stuff now properly. I can't really ignore it.
Ah, I haven't asked you about because I wanted to know about the stool. So I don't know if you mentioned, but your mum seemed to say like when you moved a stool, the spirit seemed pissed off with you. You want to use it as a footstool in the second incident in the lakes. Is that right? Like she's when she recollects it, she said she moved that you had kind of like moved a footstool or something, and then you felt the presence of that figure, whatever it
Ooh,
was,
I don't
saying,
remember
hey, hang about, stop pissing around with my footstool. And then you had a big stare off, and you were like, what are you looking at?
Oh, that might have been. I've forgotten that. Yeah, I actually can't quite clearly remember that, but yeah, that might have been it. But I definitely felt like I'd antagonized it somehow. I thought it was just me being there, but yeah, it might have been that moving the furniture around.
Because the lines that I drew that were probably way wrong was like, you when you survived and you from a bad fall that could have gone worse, it was because of the chair, and the chair was there weirdly. It wasn't
Mm,
like it was there next to a table like this or anything like that. It
yeah,
was just
no,
there, right?
just
Weirdly,
randomly there. Yeah,
randomly there on its own, isolated, perfectly there to brace your fall in a way. Maybe
yeah,
not perfect. Who knows? Maybe it was just random.
yeah.
But um, it kind of I wondered whether maybe like your
My
your
spirit, my guardian angel is a chair fanatic. Like,
yes, exactly something like this. So I don't know. Uh, Again, it's me just not being able to follow plot
yeah,
probably. But the first time, so the place in Bristol, you didn't get a feeling though, a foreboding, did you? It was more your pals had told you this spooky house, and you're like, oh yeah.
yeah,
You
yeah.
didn't get the energy then, so it's almost like you developed an awareness of this kind of like bad energy or good energy. Like, is it
Yeah,
both ways? Do you get good energy, good vibes from a place? Like,
yeah, I definitely get good vibes from the place. Like, there's places I go and visit in Liverpool that just make me feel good, and I go visit them regularly because I can sense that there's good energy about them. And I've done
like,
that. I've done that since the Magic Tree by the Palm House in Sefton Park. I go sit there like at least once a month because it just like
hmm,
grounds me and makes me feel better and connected and stuff.
nice.
Sefton Park in general, to be honest. Yeah, and that's something I've done since I was a little kid. But I think since don't know, getting older and understanding things a bit more, I can feel the energy a lot more. I don't know. It's hard to explain, and it's not something I fully understand. And I suppose all these things happening to me have given me the need to understand. So yeah, I find when I'm meditating regularly, I find it easier to perceive these kind of things.
Hmm.
When I'm like living healthily and looking after myself and stuff. So I can become quite disconnected when I'm like absorbed in my work and yeah, that kind of thing. I can become quite disconnected from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of ebbs and flows, and yeah, again, I don't really understand what's going on a lot of the time, and yeah, it's a little bit stressful sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of why I'm trying to figure it out more. And so I've ended up getting in touch with the Liverpool Spiritualist Church on the recommendation from a counsellor. So this was probably the third really bizarre thing that happened to me, which in a way actually scared me more than getting thrown out the window, um, in some ways. So this was, I think it was last year, just over a year ago. So I was asleep in my own bed, um, went to sleep at a normal time, and then I remember having this dream of like flying through this like fantastical landscape. all these like amazing like geometric domes and like shapes everywhere, and I was like soaring, like actively flying around it, being like, wow, this is amazing, this is really cool. And I was like, oh, this is lucid dreaming. I feel like I'm lucid dreaming or astral projecting or whatever you want to call it right now. I was like, this feels like I'm in control and I'm lucid, I'm aware of what's going on. This is wow, this is amazing. And then I'm having this thought like, like I wonder if I can wake up from this. And then I heard this horrible voice just be like, no, there's no waking up from this. And I started to feel like quite like scared and trapped and anxious. And then it was like, I was like, what? And it was like, no, you're stuck here. Like you're stuck here now. And I was like, what? And then I remember seeing the sky like rip open. And then this like huge blue grinning demonic face comes out of the sky and starts laughing at me. And then this rising sense of panic, fear, and then everything goes black. And it's quite hard to describe, but it felt like this like hostile negative energy was trying to get inside me. And I was fighting it. And I was like, I couldn't see anything. I was like in this like black space, but I could feel this thing trying to get inside me, and it was like sending me these like weird urges to like harm myself and harm other people. And like, yeah, it was a really horrible experience, and I was fighting it for quite a long time. Um, and then I think eventually I managed to like thrust it off. And then suddenly I'm like back in my bed, I'm like alert, and I'm like lying looking towards the door, and but I'm completely paralyzed, so like sleep paralysis. But I'm like fully awake, like I'm alert and I'm looking, and there's a huge black figure stood by my door, like looking at me and laughing at me, and I'm trying to scream at it to like leave me alone and like, yeah, get out of my life and like stop harassing me. And it laughs at me, and then it very, very slowly walks out my bedroom door. And as soon as it's gone, I like bolt upright in bed, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that was not just a dream. That was horrible. My heart's going like ridiculously fast. I'm like drenched in sweat. I'm like terrified. Um, yeah, that was really, really horrible. I just didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do. I didn't want to go back to sleep because I was like that, like this happened in my own bed, in my own house. Like, um, yeah, I was quite depressed at the time, and I think, yeah, like I've been sober for a while, but like I was quite down, and I think, yeah, that probably influenced it. But it was the fact that it happened in my own house, in my own bed, where it's somewhere I should have felt safe, and when nothing like that had ever happened before, that kind of like really, really scared me. Um, and that was like, right, I actually need some help here. Like, I can't just keep ignoring this kind of spiritual side to things, because like this is twice in my sleep that I've been like, I feel like I've been attacked. Um, so yeah, that's when I reached out to the Liverpool Spiritualist Church, because I was like, I actually need some advice here because this is scary. And yeah, like I didn't feel safe going to sleep. I didn't really know what to do. I remember, was just like, I didn't have any sage in the house, but I've heard that's what you're supposed to do. So I went and got like actual like sage for cooking. Like, you get like the little powder, and then poured it into a Rizzler and then just burnt that. Just putting in that around my room. That was all I could think of to do.
Every little helps.
Yeah, like
I
on
don't-
earth. Yeah.
so did how long ago was this?
This was just over a year ago, I think. Yeah.
Have you connected then with folk at the Spiritualist Church or?
Yeah, I was sending them emails, and they were really lovely. They sent me back a really, really long email. Basically, it was like very, very insightful in that it described a lot of my experiences and like a lot of my personality just based on this one experience that I said to them. It said that you're probably this kind of person who these kind of things have happened to. These are the things that you need to do to protect yourself in certain ways. Um, it was stuff like visualizing like a protective aura around yourself before you go to sleep and after you wake up, like of like a gold or blue color, and like, yeah, that will protect you somewhat. And then grounding yourself in nature, which is something I do anyway. That's what I've been doing already by going to the magic tree. I realized that's like something that I was already thinking of. And other stuff like asking your spirit guides for help protecting you, like directly asking. Um,
Why did they say gold and blue? Like that's very specific
you,
colors.
you know what? Actually, they might have said any color you want, but it should be something that makes you feel safe or personal to you. And I
Right.
think I just settled on gold or blue.
Okay.
I've read it elsewhere that it should be gold, but I'm not really sure why. Um, yeah, but it has helped, and I've not had anything like that happen to me since, because I've been doing those things. And Yeah, yeah. I've spoken to other people as well. I've got one friend who said that the same thing happened to him every night for 2 years. Um, every night he'd have these shadow people attacking him in his sleep, and he'd see them in his room and stuff. And yeah, he said the only way he dealt with it was learning to laugh at them. He said like they hate being laughed at, so he just learned to laugh at them and they left him alone. But
No, really.
yeah, I don't know. It's mental talking about these kind of things, to be honest, because I was, yeah, raised completely rational and no kind of like it seems like the kind of thing I would have sneered at like 7, 8 years ago. It's strange to have become this kind of like person who like believes these kind of things. And yeah, there's been other stuff when I've been like a little kid, but like it's kind of obscured by like the haze of memory. You know what I mean? Like in my adult like conscious like properly like sentient life, they're the three biggest like unexplainable things that have happened to me. And yeah, I actually don't know. I've tried to think of a concrete reason why it might have happened. The only thing I can put my finger on is that maybe it happened because I needed an impetus to pursue my spirituality more. That's the kind of I like to interpret things as having a greater purpose to it. That's the way I like to see the world. It might not be true. I mean, obviously, there's things you can't explain like that. But that's the way I choose to interpret the world in a lot of ways. So I've chosen to interpret that as I can see the benefits that it's had in terms of me getting a greater understanding of spirituality. So that's the
Yeah.
way I choose to interpret that event and the other things that have happened to me since. Like I try, like if something bad happens to you, I like to be able to see the good in it, and whatever it might be.
Okay, so I was interested in that last section to hear about a counsellor, in this case referring someone to a spiritual practice rather than a secular route for overcoming troubling experiences of this kind. But moreover, I was really struck by how sensible Charlie's discussion of science and spirituality came across in our chat generally, including in this final section coming up. The elements of spirituality Charlie's explored have been grounded in his own experiences, and he retains a sense of humility about what may or may not form part of our shared reality. His experiences, including from his childhood, which he unpacks a bit more here, have led him to want to know not just more about what others have come across with respect to ghosts, guardian angels, or so-called shadow people, but also to gain insights into topics as broad and as complex as autism, empathy, psychedelics, and spirituality, and to question the relationship between them. So while the incidents he's already described made for a pretty gripping listen, this last part of our conversation was actually my favourite part, and I think the most important in this episode.
I think, like, even talking to a chap recently about Alcoholics Anonymous and what in the last 100 years it's been doing for people, or just under 100 years, he was like, they would try and look at it medically at first, and well, what is working, or why is this working? And I think they kind of came to the conclusion. This could be very loose. I might have it wrong, but I think the key thing was that they were folk who were getting better were and able to kind of like be more in control of their life and have a more positive relationship with themselves and others, were drawing heavily on the idea that there's something bigger than just me.
I think with like I think residual energy is definitely a thing, and I think science might be able to measure that at some point. And like strong energy left by like emotions or like things happening in places can leave like residues or like yeah. I think that's maybe what happened in that house. Something terrible happened there, and then people who are perceptive to those kind of things can be influenced by those residual energies. And that's maybe like a more grounded way of explaining these things to people who might not be open to the whole like full spirit world side of things. But
Yeah.
again, it's all conjecture. I've not really like I'm not part of any spiritual communities. I don't really have many friends to talk to about this. This is all stuff I tried to figure out on my own, and yeah, getting somewhere with it. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, like I used to be very, very autistic, and then think through doing psychedelics, I've become much less autistic and much more able to express myself and speak. And like I used to have a stammer, used to have a really bad speech impediment, where like I couldn't talk to people I didn't know. Like whenever we go out for food, my mum had to order for me because I couldn't speak to the waiter. And then I did LSD like twice when I was 17, and my stammer went away overnight, and I just could just talk normally. And it was like mental, like yeah. So
Wow.
because of that experiences, I do put a lot of value on psychedelics and their ability to help people understand themselves and the world. And yeah, I don't think they should be discounted, or people's experiences should be discounted just because they are through psychedelics or other drugs. Yeah. My parents didn't really want to get me diagnosed officially because I think they just didn't want to have to put a label on it. But Yeah, no, like actually, like yeah, I think probably Asperger's, but I remember doing psychedelics enabled me to like see through that and realize that everyone else is their own unique, beautiful person, and then I could feel proper empathy and connect to people for the first time. And so that was like a big shift in my entire perception of consciousness. And then I suppose that's kind of kept developing over the years. I was vegan for a bit. I was vegetarian. I've been like mostly vegetarian since I was like 19, I think 20.
Hmm.
Around the time this happened, actually. I think when I started to pursue spirituality more, I stopped eating meat. Um, so yeah, I was vegetarian for like 5 years, and then I eat fish now just because it's good for my brain. But I
Yeah.
do still feel a bit bad about it. But yeah, that actually comes from. Oh yeah, the moment I decided to go vegetarian, I was on acid in Indonesia, riding a motorbike past a slaughterhouse, and I remember going past the slaughterhouse and looked to the right, and I made eye contact with this pig in this tiny cage. And I looked at the pig, and it looked at me, and like I saw into it. I saw into the pig, and I was like, ah, shit, I can't eat meat anymore. I was like, ah, that's like there's an intelligence in there, like a sentience, and like yeah, I can't do that anymore. So that was like, yeah, when I decided to be vegetarian.
You saw into the pig, as in like it opened up and you had an astral projection. Like what happened?
No, I wouldn't go that deep, but I just kind of looked it in the eyes, you just have like a little like I had like a moment with it. I was just like, oh no, like I felt its pain and its like fear, and I was like, oh, this is back. It's just horrible, and no, I can't do that anymore.
Was it in the same way that you had this kind of energy, um, that you feel an energy in a place, but potentially like you had some kind of
Yeah,
like an emotional kind of energy connection, sort of
yeah,
sense.
maybe, yeah. I think it could have been. It's interesting as well because it's kind of a form of empathy, I suppose. But like,
Mhm.
I'm someone who didn't feel empathy at all as a kid because I was autistic. Like, I found it incomprehensible to understand what someone else felt like. Like, that's just not how my brain was wired or worked. So then, yeah, having this weird, like, don't know, other kind of weird empathy is strange. Um, and I even still struggle with it with like other people sometimes as well when I'm not looking after myself and doing meditation routine and that kind of thing. Like, yeah, I do still kind of fall back into this like solipsistic environment, but then still have this, yeah, ability to perceive other things. I don't know. It's strange, and I don't fully understand it or understand myself to quite a lot of the time. So
What
yeah.
a, the kid stuff? Just very briefly, yeah. What were those vague, important
Um,
things?
just a sense of like seeing things move about on the landing or like seeing people go into rooms when I was a kid in the house that I grew up in.
Hmm.
And like yeah, just feeling presences around. Nothing very concrete, nothing very like definitive, but yeah, just a sense of like yeah, other things being around in my house. And like I remember like speaking to imaginary friends quite a lot as a kid.
Um, Shadow people and guardian angels. Tell me more. Guardian angels from when you were young. Shadow people from when? What the hell is all that about?
Yeah, I don't know. This is the stuff that's really like confusing me, and yeah, and it's like the stuff that's like yeah, you can talk about ghosts and stuff, and like people might be a bit skeptical, but you start talking about angels and shadow people, even like relatively like open-minded people are going to be a bit like, you've gone off the deep end there, and I feel like I've gone off the deep end a lot of the time, like talking about these kind of things, and have to be quite careful with who I speak to about these because people think you're schizophrenic, and yeah, it's not nice, but
That's a big thing. The podcast, though,
yeah,
like how many people have been institutionalized because we don't understand it, and
yeah,
maybe they weren't that much of a threat to themselves or the people around them, and it's just
yeah.
because they're telling people crazy shit that no one understands.
Like I remember having dreams when I was a little kid. I'd have these constant like recurring dreams of these like figures all stood around my bed looking down at me while I'm lying there, and I'd have that all the time when I was a little kid. Um, and they stopped when I got older, but yeah, and then yeah, seeing the shadow people in my room last year was a horrible reminder of those kind of dreams I had when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, these yeah, this is still a thing in my life.
So
And
those that assembly of people that were looking at you then and when you were younger, those were you reckon those were shadow people? That's not like good positive guardian angel stuff.
I
That was the
I don't know. I don't know enough really. There was no like definite hostile element to them when I was younger. They're just like cloaked, hooded people all stood around my bed. That's all I can really remember. Um, but yeah, there's definite like negative hostile energy from the one last year. Like it was a being of evil that was like felt like it was trying to invade me and take my energy, and yeah, it was horrible. When I was a little kid, I did used to talk to my guardian angels all the time. Like I thought they were just like imaginary friends. I didn't see them as like angels or whatever. But yeah, I used to talk to them as if they were my friends. And I felt like they were listening. But then yeah, I got older and I kind of stopped doing it. So then it was interesting to hear from the spiritualist church that the best way to protect yourself is to directly speak to them, and that this told me that everyone has their spirit guides or guardian angels, whatever you want to call them. Everyone has them. They're always there, even if you don't know it, and you just need to talk to them, and then they can look after you a bit.
I don't know. Again, me drawing bad plot lines, but maybe like the fact that you repressed that um left you autistic, unable to relate so well, like feeling a bit isolated or whatnot, until you had a more of a spiritual awakening, which then you were able to relate better and stuff. Like maybe I'm reading too much, but
Interesting. Actually, I've never thought of that.
um,
Yeah,
so it's
maybe.
like if you think that this being more candid and more connected to your spiritual capacity has made
Yeah,
you into a better person all round, and got helped you clear some stuff. Because I mean, what did LSD when
yeah,
you were 17,
yeah,
if we're saying drugs aren't necessarily the things that cause it, but they open it up for you. Like,
yeah. Absolutely. I've done a bit of research into this. Actually, there's like there's obviously there's been hardly any studies done because it's been illegal. But there are like quite a few accounts of people using psychedelics to like uh, it's quite it's quite a challenging thing to talk about because obviously like autism is like it's a massive spectrum, and there's like very severe autism and there's like Asperger's and stuff. I think I was already on like the very like the other end, but there's a lot
as
of
in like the mild end or the heavy end.
more on the milder end. I think
Okay.
um like I could still basically function. I still had some friends and that, you know what I mean? Um but yeah, I think there are studies showing that like psychedelics have helped people deal with autism in quite a big way and like be able to feel more connected and yeah, more better able to understand other people like more
Mm.
intuitively. And I definitely felt that. Like I remember like being on acid at a house party and watching people interact and like how like being able to actually understand body language for the first time and being like, oh, that means that, that means that, like something that comes naturally to everyone else and they learn inherently is I hadn't learned, but then was able to learn it then very quickly. I could feel myself becoming more aware of like yeah, social like cues and that kind of thing that would have like completely passed me by earlier on. So that was really interesting, and there's accounts of it the same thing happening to other people as well. I think I was definitely always on the spectrum. So even as a little kid, like I didn't like being touched, I didn't like being held,
Okay.
and yeah, caused my parents a lot of stress because I don't think they really understood and didn't want to get me like a label put on it or anything. But yeah, I was a very difficult kid for that reason. Um, and I am sorry. I've apologized to parents a lot for it, but but yeah,
Oh, guilt's one of those things that ain't no good to anyone. I kind of feel, or maybe it is for there for a reason. Like all of these things, like fear, it's all there for a
yeah.
reason for you. But like, yeah, it's not good to carry it around for your life. I
No,
think.
not at all. Yeah, like I've apologized and accepted it. It's been fine.
Yeah,
We got a good relationship, and that's the main thing. But
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting trying to like integrate like autism and spirituality because there's just not much written about it, to be honest. I've got not got much to go, and I've not really got anyone I can talk to about it because like yeah, it's just quite a specific thing. I don't know many spiritual people. I know a lot of autistic people, but not many who are like yeah having these kind of experiences. So I've kind of felt like I've had to figure out a lot of it on my own, but I suppose that's kind of the beauty of it as well, because it's more rewarding when it's your own personal journey. But
yeah,
and they used to be really not happy about that, even though I'd tell them all the benefits it was given to me. Until I think eventually the Sunday Times printed a study saying that psilocybin really helps people with depression, and they were like, "Oh, maybe you weren't chatting shit," and I was like, "Yeah," like. And then
yeah.
since then they've become really quite understanding.
And your dad's like, has your dad remained sort of intrigued and loving but skeptical? Like, how's it but
I'd
generally
say
gone?
I'd say just skeptical, to be honest. He's like the most rational minded man ever. Like he's yeah. Which is interesting because he's been a musician his whole life, never touched drugs at all ever. But like yeah, being a musician his whole life, but also like being a scientist and very rational, very like yeah, atheist. This is all that there is. Once you're dead, you're gone. That's it. And so
Yeah, but like grounding, right? Like grounded himself, and maybe on some level that grounds you. So I probably feel like with this stuff, it grounds me to like have a brother that's completely skeptical and
yeah,
like telling me, dude, sounds like a complete load of shit, but go, go fish, do what you want, and
yeah.
and have a bit of a laugh about it sometimes, like
It's definitely important to have yeah grounded people. Like my ex partner who was still going with really well. She was very much just like wind your neck in, like calm down a bit. It's like
yeah,
pointing out when I'm just going a bit far or like yeah. And like even if I didn't agree with her all the time, it was just still valuable to have that kind of like external influence, being like you can't just be getting like running away with the fairies here. Like you still need to be grounded in reality. Like it's all well and good pursuing these kind of things, but like
yeah.
end of the day, you still got to exist and like function and do live a normal life. So yeah, it's when it stops becoming productive, um, yeah, and becomes escapism. That's when it's an issue, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's funny actually. So I did mechanical engineering at Sheffield, and then got
My
re.
bro did. My brother
Oh
did
really?
exactly the same. Yeah,
Oh nice.
in Sheffield. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I got really depressed and dropped out after like 6 months, and then switched to architecture. I think I got really, I just realized I was doing a course that like I had no interest in actually doing, and then I released a track that I'd been sat on for like a year, been working on it for ages to put it out, and it'd been out for 20 minutes, and then yeah, do you know Pendulum, the drum and bass group? Yeah, they messaged me on Instagram after 20 minutes. They're one of the biggest groups in the world. We messaged me on Instagram being like, we've just found this tune and we love it. We're going to play it in Ministry of Sound tonight. And then played it in like all their like DJ sets for like a year. So I was like, that's the clearest sign from the universe that I should probably just be doing music. And then since then, that's what I've been doing with my life, and everything seemed to make more sense and come a lot easier and generally happier.
Okay, thank you so much again to Charlie. To finish this episode, the next few minutes are actually taken from our exchanges just after we met. So before we'd spoken, I'd shared an episode of Jack Wagner's podcast, Otherworld, with Charlie, just for a sense of what we're looking to achieve with the Scout in the Woods podcast. In that episode in question, two siblings, each recalled as 5-year-olds, been carried floating down the stairs by an invisible presence, only to find out later in their 20s that the other sibling had experienced the same phenomenon. I personally felt that incidents like these, and what's happened to Charlie too, are so compelling and so revealing about what constitutes our consciousness and our shared reality, that these stories might well give pause for thought to anyone skeptical listening in, and not just to those people who've lived through them. I mean, that was certainly the case for me, at least.
But yeah, I think in the weeks following it, when I like properly thought about what had happened, I started to like realize that yeah, I needed to actually reevaluate the way I interpret the world in quite a big way. Because yeah, even as a scientist, when you're presented with new evidence with something, you have to come up with a new hypothesis to explain it, and that's kind of what I had to do. And then kind of spurred me on to start exploring spirituality and other such things. Yeah,
Kind of like a watershed moment in your life.
yeah,
Do you,
massively, yeah.
has it changed you? Do you think, or do you same person, just different worldview? Like, how's it
Um,
impacted you?
well, I suppose like the whole point of any kind of spiritual exploration is to, I don't know, generate change. So yeah, I suppose in that way I have changed. It's kind of been like the main impetus because like I had always been somewhat interested in spirituality and stuff, but there was no like drive really. And then this happened, and I was like, right, well, I've just been thrown out of a window by a ghost, so I actually have like massive motivation to figure this stuff out because like that's terrifying, and I don't know how to stop that from happening again.
Hmm.
So that kind of like forced me to like, right, I actually need to go and learn some stuff now because yeah, just the feeling of like something being able to injure me when I was asleep, like that's like I didn't feel safe, you know what I mean? Like and
Yeah.
there have been other things that have happened since then. I'm asleep, like I've had like quite intense lucid dreams where I've been getting attacked by shadow people and demons and stuff, and I've like woken up in my bed and seen shadow people in my room and walking about and stuff. And so yeah, all these kind of things have forced me to like, yeah, pursue spirituality a little bit more and reach out to people who understand it better than me and can give me advice and stuff.
Maybe we can tail back to that if that's all right. If we can focus on like the experiences and what happened in and around the experiences, like to begin with. But that's like that's just as interesting to me, like how this stuff impacts you. Trying to work out maybe why it might have happened to you. Is it just as random as some of the other stuff that we, chaos theorist type stuff
Yeah.
in our normal physicalist framing of the world, or is there something to it? And even if not, like on a personal level, what does that journey look like? I'm super interested in story and how it relates to consciousness. And maybe only towards the end of the conversation we can kind of go there a little bit and see what your kind of world, I don't know, your inquest into spirituality, what you found out, whether you've stumbled across some similar stuff as myself. But
Got
what
an
do you
idea.
make of it? Well, any of it, but also the Otherworld episode.
Yeah, that was really interesting with the twins getting carried down the stairs. Because they happened to both of them separately and without talking to each other. It's just stuff like that like does really intrigue me in a lot of ways. And it's interesting because it's stuff that I would have like discounted as, like explainable by like false memories or, something else in the past. But like obviously since having these experiences now, I give it a lot more credence and weight. So
His show is phenomenal, I think, as a bit of kind of like popular culture that's kind of turning heads a little bit because I came at it as a skeptic as well,
mm,
effectively. Like I've always been agnostic and kind of open, but I haven't had any reason like yourself to kind of like had my head turned outside of some very like speculative stuff around, my dad's bereavement and that I just thought was poetic fallacy. I'd already thought there was more to it, and then started to watch Otherworld because I was like, someone could do a podcast on this stuff that kind of that opens it up to a wider community than just this community that's speaking to itself. Because this is massive. Like this is world breaking. It's like a new paradigm, and yet it doesn't seem to register. And at the same time, it seems now that it's registering a bit more with like lots of people talking about spiritual awakening and stuff. It's just like, to me, it feels like we're on the cusp of a big shift in how we see the world. But
yeah, I've felt that for quite a long time actually. Yeah, and like a lot of people around me as well, we talk about this being like, it feels like there is a turning point in terms of spirituality. Obviously, the West has been fully disconnected from spirituality for years.
yeah,
Uh, you got like the Freud, Jung. Obviously, Jung looked at a lot of Eastern philosophy and used that to influence his psychology, and Freud went the other way with Western iconography, and then just did loads of cocaine and let that influence his psychology as well. And then that's kind of like separated the West from spirituality in quite a big way. I think it isn't. You've seen it a lot more. Like I think meditation's becoming more widely recognized as like an integral part of being a healthy human being for a lot of people, and that's like opening a lot of people up to more Eastern spiritual traditions. But yeah, I
yeah.
think there is becoming more of a greater shift nowadays, and it's really nice to see.
I guess I'm just like keen to that we reflect the world that we're living in because and for the for, I mean that's science, right?
Mm,
You want it to reflect the world that you're living in, and if it doesn't accommodate certain experiences, your experience, say, or the various other people I'm speaking to, then it's like, well, what's up? What's going on with
yeah,
this?
innit?
Anyway, we talk about that. It's like cows come home, but like it's like the podcast is about sort of sharing stuff and making it relatable to folk. And this has been utterly fascinating. Thanks very much. And
Always nice to talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah,
let,
hopefully someone else hears it and like yeah finds it of use or yeah
that,
enlightening.
that's the point. That's the point, I think. Yeah. And it's not evangelizing. It's not saying do this, do that, but like this is what happened. What, if it's useful to anyone else, then here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, big love, big thanks to Charlie, Liam, and Tash. Tash, hope we can catch up soon to hear your story in full, in conditions. If anyone listening in would like to share a fringe experience they've personally had, or recommend a friend or family member with a story to tell, please contact Ferg at scoutinthewoods.com. That's FERG at scoutinthewoods.com. You can watch Scout in the Woods on YouTube or listen on your favourite podcast app. This has been episode 2, Charlie in the Chair. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your day, evening, night, etc.
Halloween number one.
Halloween.
Whatever was guiding me was like, right, well, he's going off the edge now. That's fine. He can wake up.
That's a big thing. The podcast, though, like how many people have been institutionalized because we don't understand it, you know, and
Yeah.
maybe they weren't that much of a threat to themselves or the people around them, and it's just because they're telling people crazy shit no one understands.
I found a really beautiful quote. I can't remember who it's by, but it's the psychotics drowns in the same waters that the mystic swims in with delight, and that's kind of how I've interpreted it quite a lot.